there's certain things in life, hard things in life, moments in life, a loss, an addiction, recovery, relationships that you just need to walk through. Like there's no escape hatch, there's no shortcut, there's no get out of jail free pass. Like you just have to walk through those things, and it takes what it takes. Mm-hmm. But you have to, you can't really avoid them. Yeah, you try and protect people, and especially in situations where there could be some significant harm. But there's some things that they just have to walk through. They have to walk through those things.
Where you are now may not be where you came from. The choices you make today may spiral out of control or spin you in the right direction. Discover a riveting, true story of how Carlos Vieira nearly destroyed his life and lived to tell about it. Stand up, stand firm, believe, make it happen, and live through the madness. Knocking doors down along the way. And don't miss others telling their powerful stories on our podcast. Visit kddmediacompany.com.
Dr. Wade Gilbert, thanks for joining us on Knocking Doors Down.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir.
Hey, glad you're a doctor. I got a list of questions that I had prepared for you because mine won't call me back. So you're ready?
He's not that kind of doctor.
Damn it.
Although we both could use a laying on a couch,
Yeah. we all could join the club.
So you can't help me with this rash that I found.
I don't want to see your rash.
Of course, we want to talk a little bit about the book as we get into things, Coaching Better Every Season, and how maybe that can translate for anyone that's struggling with mental health, or as we talk to a lot of people in recovery. And hey, anyone much like myself in recovery, we've got some mental health issues, and it's okay to say so. But more about you. Just returned. You were part of the Olympics this year.
Yeah, the infamous COVID Olympics in Tokyo, the 2021 Olympics now, and very unusual Olympic experience. The whole country was in a state of emergency while we were there, and you were basically shepherded everywhere you went. You couldn't leave your little bubble. We had to get tested every single day, and had to do the test where you spit into a vial.
Yeah.
Have you done that one?
No, only the nasal swab.
Yeah. So this one we had to do it. We were there the whole month of July. We had to do that every morning, and you had to fill about an inch worth of this vial with saliva. And if you've ever tried to do that on demand with an audience, in a bunch of doctors and a team with you, you get a dry mouth pretty quick, and all of a sudden you're trying to fill this vial, and all you're getting is air and bubbles, and it actually created a lot of anxiety for some of the players, and even myself at one point. I thought, man, because if you're one of the last ones, everybody's waiting. It's like, come on, man, just spit it out, let's go. But you got nothing to spit. So what ended up happening, you get a notification every 30 minutes before the test. Say, okay, meet down in the lobby or at this place for your test. You can't eat or drink in that 30 minutes. So after about the third day, the team figured it out. It's like, you know what? As soon as I get that notification, I'm not swallowing for the next 30 minutes. So you all meet down in the room or the lobby somewhere, and everybody's looks like chipmunks. Their cheeks are full, and nobody says a word. They get their vial and just unload into that vial, and off you go. But it was a great experience for the team. They made history. The team I was with was Team Canada, their softball team, and they'd never won a medal, an Olympic medal. So we had the best stats in the tournament. We lost the only two games we lost were, one was extra innings, and both games were 1-0. So they played great and won the bronze medal, and great experience.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I can't, in going back to being tested and whatnot, I can't imagine the anxiety leading up to training as hard as you train, doing all that work you've put in, with the possibility to may not be able to compete if you do test positive. I can't imagine what would be going through every athlete's head.
Yeah, at some point, we did a lot of work years of work, right? And in fact, I had a interview with a coach the other day, a professional rugby coach in Ireland, and they're heading into their season. And he said, "What's the one thing that really made the difference with that team?" And because our team became known, widely regarded as the model of a good team. They really worked together. They didn't panic. Not necessarily the most talented team, but just a really good working, cohesive group of people. And I said that the one thing was everything. Like it's all the little moments and interactions and details and everything you do. So for sure, there's always moments that you encounter that you couldn't anticipate, and even more so with the COVID situation, leading into training, leading into the Olympics, at the Olympics, even moment by moment, day by day, schedule changes, buses changed, just everything's changing constantly. So you can either worry about that and be in a kind of constant heightened sense of anxiety and arousal, which is, as you know, tremendously exhausting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or you can accept it for what it is and almost expect it. You know, like I get up today and I expect something's not going to happen the way we planned it to happen. Okay. And there was a book that went around the team. I didn't pick the book. One of the athletes did, who was really struggling. And she found this book through a friend. I guess it's called It Takes What It Takes. I think that's what it's called. It's Trevor Mowat, Mowad. And he's a guy who works with Alabama football. Russell Wilson's one of his main clients. He's a performance psychologist, and he works with a lot of teams, mostly with football. And through his experience, he found that one of the keys, which is not a new concept, it's been around for thousands of years, but it's kind of packaged new in a sense, just this, what he calls neutral thinking. And you don't have to accept your reality, but you have to acknowledge it.
Sure.
So in his world, you know, if he's working with pro football players or a pro football team, okay, we just got scored on, we're down 14. Or we just shit the bed, we had a terrible first half, we're down 22 points. Okay, well, what are you going to do? You're going to be miserable and start screaming at each other and throwing chairs and getting your head and pointing fingers? Or are you going to acknowledge that sucked, we sucked, that was shitty. What are we going to do? Mm-hmm. So what's next? So you reset, and that's hard, right? Especially when emotions come into play, and when you have a group of people trying to do that together. So he works a lot in that area, but to me that relates to mindfulness and being present. I always tell our players, you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling anxiety and it's like, wow, this is a big championship game, or this is to get into the gold medal game, you don't have to be more, you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be present. And if everyone's present, then we can make better decisions and at least give ourselves a chance.
That's interesting you bring that up, because I don't know how many times I fucking watched The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary.
Yeah.
But they said that's the one thing that stood out to me. The power of Michael Jordan was his ability to be in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something for me, you know, going through recovery, that I find when I talk to people, if I'm mentoring or reaching out to a mentor, that we really discuss a lot, is that power of being in the present.
Yeah, and that's a great documentary, whether you're in sport or basketball. Just so much of what I've learned from being around great teams and all levels, pro, college, Olympic, all over the world, is that it's messy.
Yeah.
It's hard. And you're going to be miserable at times, and you're going to hate a teammate at times, and you're going to have shitty days. And so there's never this utopian kind of state where, wow, we made it and life is amazing. You know what?
Unless you're a Tom Brady fan.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, Tom Brady struggles. Tom Brady has doubts. Tom Brady, it's just, and there was probably I think it's the best-selling self-help book of all time. It's a book called The Road Less Traveled You ever heard of that book?
I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's maybe back in the 70s. So it was like the first self-help book, popular self-help book. And I don't necessarily recommend it as a reading to people, but I use it as an example because the first line of that book is 3 words. The first sentence is 3 words long. So the best-selling self-help book of all time, the first piece of advice, the first sentence is, life is hard, period. So let's start from there. Life is hard. It will always be hard. So then we take the next step in thinking about, we have choices, right? So we decide how we're going to approach these difficulties, and we need help. And it's human. And I even joked, I was at an event in the World Ice Hockey Championships in Slovakia last year, and I started off, people were asking some questions, similar types of questions. I said, look, if you're alive, it's going to be hard. Like, just let's start with that, especially if you're trying to do really excellent things in life, or but even just regular things, especially with dealing with mental health issues. Like a win is getting out of bed, right? So you might, if I'm working with an athlete trying to win a gold medal, maybe working with someone who's just trying to get well, the gold medal is getting out of bed today and doing something productive, taking a little step, right? So that's kind of a place that I've tried to connect more with the humanity of you're working with people. And I always tell coaches, look, you're number one, you coach people who play sport. You don't coach tennis, you don't coach football, you don't coach hockey. You coach people who play tennis or who play hockey or who play football. So you have to focus on people first.
Absolutely. Doc, I got to ask you if you've caught the Jason Sudeikis show, Ted Lasso, because that's the thing I've loved about the show. Even though it's comedy, it's got a lot of heart, but it's that real psychology of people, and kind of his stance is to, how do we get into that little void to make them be able to maximize themselves in a competitive situation? And it's really kind of a good translation to life. I mean, I played sports throughout high school. I know, Mikey, did some competition too. And at times I missed that shit being in my early 40s. It's like, if I could just go out on the basketball court and compete one more time, I might learn some lessons that I didn't pick up on,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, it's hard to replicate that experience that you have in sport in many cases, because you get, there's a collective pursuit of a shared goal. There's a physical component to it, which, obviously changes. The more I learn, I teach a class on the brain-body connection and psychobiology and neuroscience and things like that. And I'm by no means an expert in that. I'm always trying to learn. I'm basically one step ahead of my students, but trying to make sense of that. And, the easiest way to change chemistry, and when you think about it, emotions and thoughts, like at their core, that's just chemistry, hormones. So the easiest way to change your chemistry is to move. You can change your chemistry through your physiology, in a sense. So I'll give you an example. We had a player on our team who'd already, veteran player, and struggling a lot with mental health issues, and was on medication. And at first we tried a lot of, mental things, cognitive things, so positive self-talk and visualization and goal setting, but none of it really made a deep impact. It was almost like Band-Aids, but the mental health issues it wasn't really getting at it. And she's very, very physical, very fit, probably one of the fittest athletes I've ever been around, and loved to do CrossFit and running and everything else. And I just said, well, look, you love to run. Why don't you just run more, in a sense, so each day, let's make sure you get a long run in each day. And if that even means doing a little bit less technical training, because by getting that long run in, we know when you're moving like that, how that changes brain chemistry. And it's a drug.
Right.
Your body doesn't really know where the drug comes from, but by moving, you're creating the release of certain chemicals and neurotransmitters that, just in plain English, exercise is medicine, right? So if you're moving, you're creating a better chemistry in your brain so that you can better handle these thoughts and these feelings that you're having.
Yeah.
And it actually made a big difference for her.
Yeah, I noticed for me that it's definitely something I've had to, and speaking with other people, with recovery or even mental health issues, traumas, that, hey, yeah, like you said, that dopamine or serotonin, the brain doesn't, it's just like, here it is, and of course, a lot of us that abuse substances, we want that in the quickest, easiest form possible. So it's, I think, a part of that changing your mindset of how you're going to go about getting it. And oddly enough, and I would think probably with athletes, but you earn even self-esteem in doing it in a natural, more approach of being physical activity and such.
Well, there's a lot of benefits to it. Have you ever heard of a guy named John Rady and the book Spark?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. You can share it with your listeners. It's
okay.
I would highly recommend. He's a psychiatrist based out of Harvard, and made his whole life trying to understand how to help people with depression and schizophrenia and mental health issues and the full gamut, and kind of stumbled across some early studies that showed the impact of exercise on mood and emotion and brain chemistry. And now there's a whole field of science study around that. But, that idea of the runner's high, that's something that was discovered by accident in the 1970s when the running boom started to take off, and, they started having 10Ks and marathons, and now we got mud runs and everything else, right? And triathlons. But that's fairly recent. And when people started to run and exercise in the late 70s, they started to notice that they were losing weight. That's why they started to they want to get physically fit, but they started to feel different mentally and emotionally. And we didn't have any science behind it, but people were reporting, hey, after 20, 30 minutes of running, I feel euphoric. I feel good. And that was that term, the runner's high. It literally is a high. You're getting a hit. It's a drug.
That's one of the highs I never got.
You got to add that to your list.
I know.
But it doesn't have to be running, but just the idea of movement, physically moving. It could be a fast walk. It could be cycling. It could be playing racquetball, whatever. After 15, 20 minutes of sustained activity, the chemical changes that are triggered from that movement make us feel better. Right. And so it's always been there. It's wired into us, but it's hard. It's easier to pop a pill or do something else. But you got to put some effort into it. But there's also the social component too. Like if you're moving with other people, whether that's playing a pickup game of basketball or whatever it might be, you're getting the physical benefits, but you're also getting the emotional and mental benefits. Plus, you're also starting to rewire some of those connections.
5150 is power. The power to overcome. The power to persevere. The power to set your life on a course for success. When you're faced with the challenges life throws at you, you focus and do what is needed to go beyond what is required. So stand up, stand firm, believe, make it happen, and live through the madness, knocking doors down along the way. We are 5150.
Sure. Yeah, really changing neural pathways in doing so.
Yeah, definitely. So we all, but I understand, it's complicated and everyone's situation is different. So it's not as simple as, hey, just go out and run more and you're going to be fine. It's hard and it's complicated and everybody's situation is different, but that can be something that can be added, some form of physical activity and movement and the social component can really make a difference for people. Plus it gives them meaning in life too, right? So if you're part of a pickup basketball team or going golfing or whatever it might be, playing tennis, it just kind of gives you an additional little bit of purpose in life.
Absolutely. Dr. Gilbert, being that you've done so much, I got to know, tell us about young Wade. Growing up, what were you like, and how did you end up going towards this field? I'm going to assume that you are a sports fan working around sports. There had to be a passion there in addition to your studies and such.
Yeah, I think I'm 51 now, but as you get older in life, and you kind of reflect and look through the rearview mirror a little bit and wonder, you have those moments like, why am I in Fresno? Why, like, how did I end up here? And people often ask me that, why do you live in Fresno? And I always say, well,
that too when I visit.
I said, well, for the raisins, man. It's the raisin capital of the world. If you like raisins and grapes, you gotta be where the action is. But
I hope that's your fucking answer to people. I love raisins.
You gotta be where the action is, man. Get your ear to the ground, brother.
Exactly. That's right. Go right to the source, brother. And but I do tell people that, because people will, especially when I'm doing events, and there's, you've been around. Just there's a little bit of different views on depending on where you live. It always amazes me. People have no problem trash talking somebody's hometown. It's like, you live in that place? What do you live there for?
That's the story of our lives, man. I get that every time I tell people where I live. Like, what? Why? What is there to do? It's like, the hell do you do that's so different that I don't?
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it's people and community and, those simple things that we overlook. It's not buildings and things like that. But
it's what made you, your town.
Yeah,
what made you.
Exactly. And so I grew up in a small town. I was actually born in Toronto, the biggest city in Canada, but then at a very young age moved northern Canada, a small town, 5,000 people, pretty much up in the middle of nowhere. But it was a great place to grow up and also just the time, in the 70s, it's like parents were at work and get out of the house, see you later, walk a couple miles to school every day, back and forth, like just stuff that you wouldn't necessarily do in a lot of places today, and different time and different environment. But that freedom allowed me and my buddies just to play, and make up games and try shit and make jumps and run your bikes over platforms and jumps and, fall and break your arm, just stupid things.
Creativity too. It gets your mind going, it gets your imagination. Yeah. Like that's what I feel like kids need nowadays, as opposed to a tablet or an iPhone. You know what I mean?
Oh, I hear you 100%. And is something that we always it's cultural. You don't see that so for example, I've been to Japan 3 times for different events, and one of the things that stood out to me, not saying they're right and we're wrong, and
right.
Lots of different ways to do this, but cultural changes to me are incremental. Like, you don't make a huge shift one day. It's just small. You chip away at things, and then all of a sudden you lift your head up and go, oh my gosh, look at what we're doing. Our kids are inside all day staring at a video screen. Like, that didn't just happen. It's 20 years of incremental changes. But one of the things that struck me that over there, like, I'm a dad, I got 2 kids, 14 and 17. And, a lot of times I'll spend the majority of my day being a taxi driver. I'm driving kids to hockey practice, soccer, water polo, school. And I want to do that. I want to be, connected to my kids in their life. But there's also a part of me that feels like, you know what? Walk to school, ride your bike. Yeah, it's hot. So what? But then you flip to the other side and say, well, making them do it for the sake of making them do it when I can do it. I do have the time and I can drive them, but it's almost like you're letting them off the hook a little bit. And you don't want them to be uncomfortable. And so my point anyways, when I was in Japan, I noticed like their work schedules are ridiculous. They work they don't really have any understanding of a weekend. Like they don't really have a word that translates to that. Like weekend, what's a weekend? Like you just work, you're always working. And so the kids get around they find a way to get around. They bike, they walk, they take public transport. Like you don't see minivans shepherding kids back and forth to soccer practice. You just don't see that. The parents are working and the kids figure it out. They get around, they do stuff. But it's also a different environment. It's probably a lot safer, a little bit more communal and controlled. But to your point, I think, you know, and there's some neat, this is something I talked to on a previous podcast too, a little bit about, but there's some neat research that shows, you know, there's an overrepresentation of pro athletes in every major sport. And this has been replicated around the world from small towns. So you have a greater likelihood of making it to the pros if you're coming from a small town. And so you have to ask what's happening in a small town. In a small town, kids generally have a little bit more freedom to play and experiment and to fail, because there's not as many structured activities. Maybe people know each other maybe a little bit more, so they're a little bit more trusting, and kids can go outside and mess around and ride their bike and do stuff where you wouldn't necessarily be doing that in LA or Fresno or some Oakland. So I was lucky. I grew up in a small town and then ended up a multi-sport athlete, but never good enough to make a living as an athlete. So ended up going through college. Honestly, when I was graduating high school and I figured, well, if I can't make a living as a pro athlete, what's the next best thing? Oh, hanging out in the gym all day in shorts as a PE teacher. That sounds great. I'll do that, right? So that was the extent of it.
Damn it, Johnson! I said 200 pounds.
Exactly. And so, you know, you don't know what you don't know when you're young, whatever. And so I went through college thinking I'm going to be a PE teacher, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think, you know, that can be a really impactful type of experience. But I ended up getting asked by some people at the university who saw something in me that I didn't see, if I wanted to get involved in grad school and research projects around sport and coaching, and did that. And one thing led to another. And next thing you know, working at UCLA and then had an opportunity to work at Fresno State because my wife works in this field as well. So they offered us 2 jobs, and we were young, didn't have kids. And we thought, yeah, it's great. Let's go try that out for a while. Because it's pretty rare to have 2 jobs in the same university or the same department. We work down the hall from each other.
Right.
And it just kind of grew on us. I love the outdoors. I love, you know, access to the mountains, to the coast. I love to fish and boat and do stuff like that. So just kind of grew on us, and 20 years later, we're still here.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I can relate to that story. It's interesting, though, you bring up that small town life as far as, you know, athletes and that ability. We were having a conversation, Mike and myself, and one of our other coworkers.
I was like, I swear we were just talking about that.
And then I brought up Manny Pacquiao. I said, you know, how do you not come from the situation he did? We may not see the excellence that was achieved, because a lot of athletes that thrive, they are forged in fire, man. I mean, you got to look at like the Rocky movies as a prime example, not coming from shit, not having shit, but in it, like you said, and it made me think when you're talking about Japan, having been there, is the youth has to become really resourceful. You know, for addicts, they can relate to, we were resourceful sons of bitches when we wanted to get whatever our substance was, and we still carry that superpower over into sobriety. And so for me, it's kind of that resourcefulness within athletics, or just even great business leaders, that seems to be there and present, because you hear it all the time. You know, Tim so-and-so, the CEO of a, you know, Fortune 500 company, he came from, you know, small town X and has achieved this. It's really pretty fascinating. And I think that it goes back to like having to become resourceful and being allowed to fail, which has kind of been almost eliminated with the, you know, I'm not a fan of the everybody gets a trophy shit. You know, I had to earn my goddamn trophy. I had to pitch a no-hitter to get my trophy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. I've also come to learn that things are never as simple as we want them to be, so it's this way or that way. It's always gray, right? It's always a combination of both in a sense. And I like the idea someone shared with me once, good environments are, especially when you're trying to lead people, raise kids, lead teams, coach teams, or you could say, lead a group, support group, whatever it might be, is they're yes but environments.
Mm-hmm.
And what they mean by that is when someone comes to you with an idea or a suggestion, our initial response is it aligns with what I believe or want to do. So yeah, or it doesn't, no. So it's yes or no. But in really rich developmental environments, leadership environments, there's more of a yes but kind of mindset. So you come to me with an idea and I might think, hell no, we're not doing that. That's stupid. Can I catch myself and say, yeah, okay, interesting, but can we do it in this way? So it's always a bit of a compromise. So there's kind of rules of engagement or maybe boundaries. I always like to use this example when I talk to coaches in terms of how they want to create environments, because we go back to simple dichotomies. It's this or that.
Right.
Liberal or democratic, male or female, black or white, whatever it is, but it's always gray. It's always overlap. And so I say, look, think about your environment like this. It's like a picture frame. So you have a picture frame, and as the leader, the coach, the mentor, whatever, pastor, whatever it might be, there's boundaries. So there's some agreed upon boundaries. And if you had a kid in a small town, for example, the boundaries could be physical boundaries. Like you're not crossing, you can go play, but you're not crossing the train tracks. You're not going over here, but everywhere else within the boundaries here, go play. So you create the boundaries that give it some structure, because everyone wants structure and guidance. Even people say, get the fuck out of my way and leave me alone, right? They still want some structure and want to be supported. So you set the boundaries and then you let them paint the picture within the picture frame. So they have the freedom to play and experiment, try things within reason, right? So like within these boundaries. And when I worked with the US ski and snowboard team, they used a term, they said, this is how we roll. So if you come into the team, yeah, it's fun and it's that whole X game mentality and independent and rebels, but we still have some boundaries in how we do stuff. And so they just refer to it, this is how we roll around here. And so I've seen that as a good kind of framework for leading groups. You give them some boundaries, but then you let them play and paint and create, so they have an opportunity to express themselves and be themselves in those environments. Because one of the basic human needs, we have 3 basic human needs. And one is autonomy. We want freedom. We want to be able to be who we are, right? How we're wired inside. But we also want structure and we also want support. So it's that combination.
Absolutely. Well, what made you decide that you wanted to write the book?
A paycheck? No, I'm just kidding.
That's the most honest answer.
There's money left.
I gotta
burning a hole in my pocket.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta pay for braces and insurance for my teenagers. And
all right.
Yeah, no, there's always been, you may have felt this, there's things inside of you that you feel, and oftentimes you kind of blow them off.
Yeah.
But the more you kind of learn about yourself and you connect with yourself, and there's signs, there's things that speak to you in a sense. So I've always been a creative person. And if I hadn't kind of fallen into sports science and academia. I think I could have been maybe a director or in music, a producer. Like I just love creating things. And so I view my classes, when I teach a class, I view it as a creation. Like I'm creating some painting in a sense. So no two classes are ever the same because I'm different every day and my students are different. So I always had a feeling like there's something I want to share on a bigger platform, and maybe it's in a book format. So I always kind of had files on my computer open when I get an idea. And, 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, they're probably ridiculous ideas or stupid ideas, or an idea that someone else had already. Anytime I thought, wow, this is brilliant, I got this great idea, inevitably I do a little research on it. Sure enough, somebody 40 years ago was already talking about it. So I would just kind of keep this open file, and then it was just timing, just patience and waiting and thinking about it. And I had a publisher approach me at an event and say, "Hey, you ever think of writing a book?" I said, "Funny you should ask." And we
1,000 pages.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which book do you want? And so. It's a creative activity. It's a compromise. I think that's an important life lesson. We always, we think it has to be this or that, like it's my way or your way. But it's the best things in life are always compromises, So that book I never would have been able to write that book that way by myself. So I wrote it, but I had editors and a coach essentially kind of helped with the publisher. Reviewing it and helping shape it. And, we had arguments, and we went back and forth, and there were days where I get off calls and go to my wife and say, "Oh, this is bullshit. I'm not writing anymore. I don't want to do it." But it took over 3 years to write it. And I originally thought, oh yeah, 6 months I'll be done. But you just stick with it, but you need support, right? Like there's dark days and hard moments, and just trying to do it on your own. I don't know if you can do things like great things in life or hard things in life on your own. It's challenging to walk through those doors by yourself. So I had a great coach and the editor there, and we stuck with it. And so it was about 3.5 years, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It's been really well received. People in the sport field and coaching love it. It's opened doors and connections, giving me opportunities to do events all over the world and meet people I'd never would have met. So in a sense, the book is really kind of a gateway or a catalyst in a sense to relationships and conversations. And they asked me to write a follow-up book that I'll probably start in the next few months. But so, yeah, I don't know, it just was an opportunity to share. But I think we all, in a sense, have a book inside us, whether that's a painting, a podcast, volunteering in our community, mentoring other people. Like there's something inside of you that wants to come out, and if you're open to that and have people around you that can kind of nudge you and support you, I think we all have those types of things inside us.
Absolutely. And I find it so interesting as it relates to your work, and especially, for our listeners that listen for a mental health aspect or an addiction recovery, is that importance of community overall and connectivity, which sports offers. But it also makes me wonder, how do you translate that to your personal life, not just maybe with you within your marriage, parenting and so forth? Because I talk about a lot. Boundaries is a thing that I've really started to learn and work on in recovery. So it was interesting you bring that up within the model of sports and within an organization.
Yeah. Before I answer, I'm curious to hear how you guys approach that. Could you expand a little bit on the boundary idea?
Well, for me, having come from a trauma background that related to a sexual incident in my youth, that I realized that throughout my relationships, it was always a push and shove of, who's in charge here. And, it was always control issues. It was never a cohesion like you were talking about, the gray area. It was very black and white, and I was definitely guilty in many a situation. So it's really interesting to me that you brought that up in a situation, within the context, because you think the Lakers, all right, get LeBron the ball. Well, that's not always the best thing to do, or get Steph Curry the ball. Nah, sometimes he's going to have to dish, or he's not the one that should be controlling the flow or the tempo, And I think that as I get older, and I learned that about interpersonal relationships as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mikey, what are your thoughts on that?
I always think you get Steph Curry the ball. He always controls the tempo. No, I just I don't think I've ever had issues with boundaries myself.
You've been pretty. I mean, we've known each other about a decade. He holds pretty well, and
I like to think. I mean, everyone's different, to each their own. But I don't think I've had boundary issues.
I just think it's a really interesting aspect of life that maybe we don't let our youth fail as much that they don't learn, because we have to kind of figure out where are our boundaries. It's not a blanket thing,
Yeah, no, it's honestly, the more I learn about the areas that I work in and mental health as an example, the less confident I am in working in this space. So the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know.
Sure.
And honestly, as I was writing that book, by the time I got to the end of the book, I felt like, man, I shouldn't be writing a book about anything. I don't know anything about any of this. So it's a bit scary in a sense as you dive into things, and there's almost a panic moment, I found anyways, at times, where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not qualified to do this. I don't know what I'm talking about. So there's always that element of doubt, but if you're stretching yourself and you're trying to do new things or grow, that the targets keep moving too. So yes, you're getting healthier, you're getting better, but then the standards and the targets keep moving too. So there's always a stretch, in a sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense too. Cause we talk about mental health and all that, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on it. You know what I mean? I have mental health issues. I can talk to you about mine. We could talk about yours. We'll relate and we'll both realize that it's very common. But I mean, I'm not a doctor. We're not diagnosing. We're not saying you have this is what you need to do. We're just talking about it. So I get what you're saying is the more you talk about it, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't relate more to that statement. I feel you there.
What's the saying? I know what I know.
Yeah. And just, it's very humbling, and I think by the type of work that you do in the space that you're in, it's very much a service, kind of profession, right? You're serving others, you're giving by sharing your story.
Yeah.
You're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to be human. You're willing to pull back that armor and say, yeah, I'm fucked up too, man. Like, look, I'm dealing with stuff. We all got stuff and it's hard and you probably aren't going to be able to do it on your own. So let's be human about it. And I think, yeah, the type of work that you do and just sharing, I think it's so powerful. Just even like in my world in sport, a lot of the issues that I end up working when I'm asked to work with a team or a coach, it's rarely about the sport. It's rarely about technical, tactical, physical. It's almost always relationships, communication, personal issues, mental health issues. And so honestly, I've learned, I've made tons of mistakes, but I've learned a lot of times, they just really want someone to listen to them. And early in my career, I felt like, man, I got to tell them stuff. I got to solve their problems. I got to be the fixer. And it really hit me one time, honestly, with my wife when she was venting one day, and I'm trying to be the fixer, and she said, "Shut the fuck up. Just shut up. I don't need you to fix me right now. I just need you to listen.
Just want to be."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without judgment, without trying to fix me. And I always remember that moment. And it's just, the difference between kind of sympathy and empathy. And, empathy is just listen. Say, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that hurts. Yeah, that sucks. Like even things where, a player is coming to me and we're talking about a meeting they're going to have with a coach or a teammate. And they start talking about, it's going to be so hard. I know she's going to get emotional and she's going to go here and go there. And earlier in my career, I would have right away tried to think, okay, how can we fix that? So it's not going to be hard, or it's not going to be like that. Now, especially with, mature athletes, college pro athletes, I'll say, yep, it's going to be hard. Yep, it's going to suck. Yep, she's probably going to get emotional. Like just acknowledging.
Take stock, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of knocks them back a little bit because they're coming to you because they want you to solve it and fix it and make it safe. And that's not helping them. If I'm trying to wrap them in protective coating and say, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. She's going to love you. And she's going to call you a bitch and it's going to be hard. Yeah. And so let's figure out how to work through that. Mm-hmm. And it's to me, that's empowering. And it's also showing love to them. Like, I love you enough to tell you the truth and to help you deal with reality. I'm not here to protect you from hard stuff. That's not my job. I'm not doing you any service by trying to pretend that things are something that they aren't.
Yeah.
So, but that took a long time for me to get there.
Yeah. Well, and I know as a father myself that figuring that out sure has helped with parenting, man, because those situations.
Shut up, Dad.
God.
Yeah, totally.
Dad always asks me to do the dishes.
You're ruining my life.
I hate you.
I haven't gotten that yet, Wade, but if I do, that's going to be a tough one. It's going to be like, you need to go to your room because I'm going to go cry.
I'll tell you a story. Yeah, I have a big heart and I'm soft at times for sure. But I remember there was one time with my daughter, and I think she's in the house now. She might be listening, but that's fine. She knows the story. I think she was 4, and she was having a meltdown, big time meltdown. And so we were at home, and she was in her room. Or we made her go in her room, and she wanted to come out of her room. And we said, no, you're not coming out of your room. And so I had to physically sit outside the door of her room with 2 hands holding the door because she's yanking on it on the other side and kicking it and screaming. And I just said, no, you're not getting a pass on this. Like in my mind, I think you're not just gonna get saved in this moment. You need to. I think sometimes we forget that there's certain things in life, hard things in life, moments in life, a loss, an addiction, recovery, relationships that you just need to walk through. Like there's no escape hatch, there's no shortcut, there's no get out of jail free pass. Like you just have to walk through those things, and it takes what it takes. Mm-hmm. But you have to, you can't really avoid them. Yeah, you try and protect people, and especially in situations where there could be some significant harm. But there's some things that they just have to walk through. They have to walk through those things.
Yeah, as is for all of us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Dr. Wade, we're going to ask you for some encouraging words for the listeners here. But right now, let's have some fucking fun. How about some random questions? All right. These are just off the cuff. Have fun with it. Mikey, you're up first.
All right.
So.
No, Mikey, I don't want to join you next weekend in Tahoe.
All right. Top 3 teams: football, basketball, baseball, and since you're from Canada, I'll throw in hockey too. Go.
Top 3 teams. Current or all time?
Not like
current or all time, or my favorite.
Your favorite. Sorry.
Let's go. Favorite sport, huh?
Holy shit. Okay,
football,
come on now.
Baseball, hockey.
Okay, well, I often get asked that question, who's your favorite team? And typically I say whoever I happen to be working with, whoever's writing me a check at the moment.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But I would say definitely the Golden State Warriors a couple of years back in their heyday. It was just fun to watch, whether you're a basketball fan or not.
Absolutely.
Just the freedom, the flow, the energy. It was just fun to watch.
I told so many people that. I said, even if you don't like basketball, just watch the Warriors. Just watch them.
Exactly. And then, of course, I grew up in the 80s watching Michael Jordan and the Bulls and that. And then, of course, you see it with the documentary now. But that was incredible to watch. I love watching the Edmonton Oilers, the hockey team right now, because they have the best player in the world, maybe one of the best athletes in the world, a guy named Connor McGregor. McDavid. I'm
that dude plays hockey too.
Connor McDavid. Yeah. He's just, I honestly, I just love watching people in their prime. Mm-hmm. And so it's just incredible to see world-class performance. So yeah, the Edmonton Oilers would be one, the Golden State Warriors in their prime there. I'm thinking of other teams, maybe in, I guess in baseball. Of course, I got to cheer for the Blue Jays, Toronto Blue Jays, growing up and being around that. And football,
a World Series.
I was in my early 20s, really into that kind of stuff when they won their back-to-back World Series in I think 92, 93, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Given that I work with coaches and study coaches, watching Bill Belichick and the Patriots, I know. Yeah, you love him or you hate him, but just his level of what he's done at the organizational level. They have had great players too, but
Belichick, of course, is a genius. He is a genius.
Exactly. And of course, I'm a big Derek and David Carr fans, having had them as students going through Fresno State.
Now you're really starting to break.
See, I'm a Raiders fan. He's a Niners fan.
Die hard Niners. Niners.
Well, hey, okay.
Football was my main question. I just had to throw out the
Niners in the 80s and the early 90s for sure, right? With Montana and Walsh and Jerry Rice, and what a dynasty.
It proved phenomenal. My loyalty to the Niners surviving the Jeff Garcia years. Now that I'm still a Niner fan, and they did very well, not last year, but bandwagon. It's like, what?
Yeah. Well, and baseball, I'd say, the A's are just a neat case study. They get shit on all the time, and like that movie, the Moneyball, right?
I love Moneyball.
I love that movie.
I love it. Yeah.
That was great. So just underdogs and how they perform. But, you look at the San Francisco Giants and the run they've had, and that's been fun to watch too. So, but no matter what I say, I'm going to get shit on, because especially where I live here, if I say Dodgers, half the people are going to hate me. If I say Raiders, half the people are going to hate me. So it's like you got to pick a corner over here.
And that's my thing with baseball. Like I'm a Giants fan, but I have Cleveland Indian hats. I have Dodger hats. Baseball doesn't matter to me. But when the Niners lose, like, don't expect me at work on Monday. It's that.
Oh no!
I get pissed. I am livid.
I don't bother contacting him. It's a waste of time.
Everybody knows. All my friends know. Do not contact me if the Niners lose.
So, what's your prediction for the Niners this year?
This year they're looking really good, and that preseason is just preseason. Granted, they're not going to show you any plays that they're going to run. I think Jimmy G is going to have it's either going to be he eats chowder and does nothing, or he just shows the hell up and lights it up, because their first round draft pick, they pick a quarterback. Now that's got to make Jimmy feel pretty insecure. So it's like, dude, I either got to go balls to the wall or he's going to eat chowder. But Trey Lance looked good in preseason. Kid's got an arm and might be the next Russell Wilson. I'm very pro Jimmy Garoppolo, very pro. I haven't given up on him. But my prediction that the Niners, they're going to do, as long as everybody stays healthy. I'm surprised they still have not fired their strength and conditioning coach, because 32 on injured. You see, now I'm going off. Now you got me started. 32 on the injured reserve list is just unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Like somebody's doing something wrong if that many people are hurt. But anyways, I don't have a set number of predictions, but I think they are going to do very well this year. Very well.
Nice. Yeah. No, they have. I just following sports. They've had a a good, better than average run. You know, they had some highs and lows for sure,
Sure.
but yeah, for sure, they're built to have a decent season, no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Next question. What's the most interesting sport you've had to work with? I didn't find any like motorsports or anything in your work history.
Well, I've been contacted, but everyone, motorsports, auto racing, bass fishermen, pro bass fishermen, fighter pilots, you name it. The fighter pilots was pretty unique for sure. And working with, sitting around having conversations with guys who land fighter jets on aircraft carriers and guys who fly Black Hawk helicopters in the height of the Iraq War, and talking about how you handle emotions and stress and you get psyched up for stuff. That's just next level. But it's also interesting how unsophisticated. So it's basically survival of the fittest. And I've seen that in a lot of high level situations too, where you think it's like, wow, they must have, NFL, right? Like, man, they got it figured out. Unlimited resources, best in the world of everything. And
sure,
when you spend time with some of these teams, you say, man, it's no different than the shit I talk to high school coaches about or stuff we talk about in my intro to sports psych class. It's not like they have some hidden knowledge and wisdom that nobody else has. At the end of the day, it comes down to discipline and doing what you know you need to do. And I think, love him or hate him with Tom Brady, he's a disciplined guy. He does. Oh, yeah. Look how he take LeBron James. Look how they take care of their body. Roger Federer up until recently was knee surgeries. But so interesting. The fighter pilots definitely quite unique. And, it really hit me. We were talking about landing on aircraft carriers at night, and I was asking them, okay, and again thinking, and they must have this figured out and dialed in. So I really want to know how do you guys handle those moments? And he said, well, look, when we come in to land, if we land, because oftentimes they miss, planes go over the edge of the boat, they lose jets. Said when we get out of the cockpit, we're shaking, like the adrenaline and the rush. It's just like you're out of your skin in a sense. And I said, well, how did you prepare for that? And how did the military prepare for you for that? So they didn't. It's just the ones who could do it made it. Like it's just survival of the fittest. And if you couldn't handle it, you weren't doing it. And so the military has changed because they can't afford to just hope some guys figure it out and we have enough. So military hires a lot of performance psychologists now too. And so that was an interesting one. WWE.
Really? I'm a big pro wrestling fan. That's interesting.
They brought me out to their training facility, their headquarters in Orlando. And it was funny because they contacted me and at first I thought it was a joke. I said, really? So but at the end of the day, like I've worked with all these different groups all over the world and cricket and you name it. It's people, right? So yeah, it's pro wrestling, but it's people who are pro wrestlers. So there's still principles of teaching and learning and feedback and practice design and things like that. So that was really interesting because I spent 5 days there with them and they designed it so that they wanted me to come in and observe them in all their different situations and give them feedback on on how they develop talent and how they coach, because all their coaches are former wrestlers. Yeah. And so there's no you don't go to school to learn how to coach or get a degree in coaching. It's just one day you're wrestling, the next day, okay, you're coaching. So that's fine to a point, but they're a multi-billion-dollar business and they are opening performance centers around the world. And so there's treating it more like an investment. Like if we're going to have sustained business and healthy and productive entertainers, we need good coaches. Yeah. So come and help us understand that. So they coordinated it so that they had an audition while I was there. They have 40,000 people a year around the world who audition to get into the WWE. They had an audition where they brought in the top 40 after they whittled it down, and I got to sit through an audition with them. They had some rehearsals. They're they're acting, but they're great athletes. These are phenomenal at that size. What some of these guys can do is unbelievable. And they had 5 rings set up in the performance center, and each ring is a level. So if you make it through the audition, and you might not have ever wrestled, like you get people from all walks of life. So people never wrestled, or anything. So ring 1 is basically like the kiddie pool. You're going to learn how to wrestle and not get killed, right? And so that's really
got to take those bumps, learn to take a bump.
Wrestling 101, right? Then, so you move around the rings, and the 5th ring are the people you see on TV and going on tour and stuff like that, but they're all in the same room. Like it's just a gym, basically a big open gym. And so the one thing I remember distinctively, it was really interesting, and also just seeing how the performers put on their shell in a sense. So they're playing a role, this alter ego, right? A persona. But then they'd come out of that and they'd walk out of the ring and they'd come over and talk to him. They'd just be really genuine, and some of them, and he was like, "Hey, can I talk to you? I got this issue I've been dealing with." So one minute you're watching them toss people all over the place and pounding their chest and what you'd see on TV, and then a minute later, 20 feet away, you realize they're a 22-year-old kid who's got anxiety and same issues everybody else has.
Right.
And then the other thing that stood out was they wanted me to do a couple of sessions in their boardroom with their head coaches. And so Shawn Michaels was in there.
Yes.
And yeah.
You've heard of Shawn Michaels, right?
Yeah. I mean, I worked in pro wrestling commentary for a couple of years, and Shawn Michaels is my all-time favorite.
You would know all these guys.
With him. Yeah.
Yeah, way more than I would. So anyways, it's funny because he looked like Shawn Michaels. So he had a cowboy hat on, cowboy boots, ripped jeans, tank top, whatever. He looked like Keith Richards, like weathered. This guy's lived a life. Okay. And he didn't want to stick around. And I can't blame the guy. It's like, who the hell is this guy? I'm gonna sit through this guy's gonna give a lecture. Fuck off, I'm going home. So the head coach, another former wrestler, he said, "No, you're staying for this session. We paid to bring this guy, and you're going to stay. It's 45 minutes." So I'm sitting at this little tiny boardroom at a table that seats maybe 12, and I'm sitting. So we're elbow to elbow, and I got Shawn Michaels sitting beside me, and right away I can tell, he's leaning back, he's got his arms folded, and I've done stuff with teams all over the world, so I know the deal. It's like, okay, we done yet? Can we get out of here? Like some people are just not ready or interested. And I'm not some big famous person, so it's not like they got, Bill Belichick sitting there. It's like, Wade, who's this guy? Fresno? So I say, you know what? Whatever, he's here. We're gonna make it work. I'm gonna try and share a few things with him that he might find, in the whole group right there. And so they were really engaged, but he didn't say a lot. But over the session, and I always try and make it about the people I'm working with. I don't go in and ever really lecture at people unless they tell me, "Hey, we're paying you for a lecture. We want you to lecture." But my preference is I want to make it interactive. I want to interact with people, connect with people, talk to people. So over the 45 minutes, through discussions and examples and stuff, now he's more relaxed in his chair. He's not folding his arms. He's leaning forward. He's kind of smiling a little bit. And I have this one diagram. It's a pyramid, and it's got building blocks of greatness in it that we use from work I did with John Wooden at UCLA. And so I shared that and went through it. And at the end, I'll never forget, at the end of the session, I was probably 45 at the time. And so at the end of the session, he stands up and he just kind of grabs my hand and shakes my hand and goes, in this real gruff kind of voice, goes, hey kid, hey, that pyramid thing you showed, really like it, man. That was really cool. Walked out of the room. And so I just always remember, like, I got a seal of approval from Shawn Michaels. I must have been doing something right. I'll take
Hell
it.
yeah. Hell yeah.
Oh,
That was a fun one.
very cool. Well, Wade, we like
quick.
to. Oh,
real
you
quick.
got one more?
I have one more serious question that it's kind of a newer question, but this one is to be taken very seriously. Would you rather fight a horse-sized chicken or 10 chicken-sized horses? And there is a right answer. Right and
There is
wrong.
a right answer.
There is a right answer.
A horse-sized chicken. Or 10. What was the other option? 10?
Or 10
horses.
chicken-sized horses.
You know, when you woke up this morning, you weren't expecting this.
You never know when that situation will happen.
Yeah, I take the 10 chicken-sized horses because
That
I
was the-
figured
that was
I could start booting them around, take a few out of,
Just punt the little
Yeah,
bastards. But if you
exactly.
have a horse-sized chicken coming at you, one peck to the face and you're screwed. So you
and
got to
then
right. You got to right.
yeah, we're on the same page.
Definitely. We're on the same page here. I see it.
Exactly.
Oh, shit. Well, Dr. Wade Gilbert, man, we appreciate it. And we always like to leave the guests with any last words of encouragement. Maybe those that are, maybe someone's listening, they're a leader or struggling with some mental health or coming out of addiction or whatever else it is. That you can kind of lend to people some positive advice.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. And one of my favorite quotes is when one person teaches, two people learn. And so any opportunity you have to share your story, mentor, teach, lead other people, and your initial response might be, I can't do that. I'm not ready for that. There's always these moments in life where you have opportunities to take a step, to step out of your comfort zone, to try things. And to be fully alive, you have to do that. You have to try those things, and it will be uncomfortable, it will be messy, you will fail, but that's how you grow. And that's how you really feel alive and find your purpose in life and find yourself. So I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of opportunities to mentor, to lead, could be speaking at a church group or a small group or mentorship or one-on-one or whatever. You'll surprise yourself. You have more power inside you than you realize, and you do have gifts to share and unlock. Also, you can't do it alone. My experience, and also being around world-class athletes and teams, and you even a Michael Jordan wasn't going to win a championship until he came to the point where he realized, I can't 1 against 5. I can't beat teams by myself. I have to trust my teammates. I have to connect with my teammates. I have to care about them. So you allow yourself to open up to other people who want to help you in your life. And sometimes you'll get betrayed, and sometimes that trust will be broken. And that's painful, but it's also part of growing and being alive again, right? So those would be big ones. And then the last one I guess I would share is just that idea of, you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be present. And another quote I like is, don't let best get in the way of better. Often we stop ourselves from taking a step because we don't feel we're ready. Like in my world in sport, right, a coach or an athletic director is like, hey, that's a great idea, but we're not quite ready yet. We haven't practiced it enough yet, or it's not fully done, or we haven't fully vetted it. Or just fucking try it, man. Take a step. That's the only way you're going to get better and learn and grow, is to try. And so if you're always waiting for it to be right or finished or best, you'll never take that step and you'll miss opportunities. So don't let best get in the way of better. Anytime you take a step, you're getting better. And so you just have to keep those things in mind. But it's hard, for sure. It's hard, but those are things that I find to be helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Dr. Wade Gilbert, thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Oh no, thanks guys. It's I gotta say this has probably been the most fun I've had on a podcast in a long time.
Hell yeah,
Yes,
love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.